You can almost feel the tension, can't you, vibrating through the country as we speak, because this is A-level results morning.
It's a big day.
We all remember that morning, don't we? Do you? Did you go to school to pick up your results?
No, I was aware. I was working in the States, but I was so relaxed, you know. Well, I mean,
Is that because you had it in the bag? You were like, it's all fine.
Well, do you know what? The first time, I didn't actually bother going to a lot of the exams, so I redid my A-levels when I was a year older. And at that point, I was like, oh, it's absolutely fine. I mean, it all works out in the end, doesn't it? You know, I think there's probably a bit too much pressure put on 18-year-olds. You know, if you don't get into your first choice uni, you probably go to a more fun one in the end. So
that's a really good philosophy.
Very good. I mean, I think I remember. So this was a long time ago. So there was no internet.
No.
There was
you didn't get them online.
No, nothing like that. So, and a lot of people were travelling and doing whatever. So I think there was a phone service. So you would phone in and they would say exactly.
And they'd read them out to you down the phone.
Yeah, they'd say biology, whatever it was.
Well, what did you get? Come on.
I'm not going to pretend that I forgot. I know exactly what I got, but
you're not going to tell us.
Was it better than Kelly Knox?
I don't know what did she get?
I think she got a couple of C's, didn't she?
Did she?
And then Priti Patel. I don't think. Yeah.
How do you know all this stuff? I don't know.
That's all I think about people's A-levels. Yeah.
What did you get, Charlie?
I got 3 A's.
Oh, God. There's always one, isn't there?
Very
good. I wasn't predicted to get that, though.
Did you go to school to get them?
I think that was... I did, yeah. Well, it was the kind of thing that we all went to the school to get them.
Yeah.
And it was really special.
Strength in numbers.
And I was not expecting that at all. But I think having not done very well when it came to the mock exams, that obviously gave me sufficient sort of impetus to think, well, I need to get cracking on this.
Well, your last-minute cram, you cram it at the end.
Well, I left school at 16 to join the local paper. But my mum thought it was a very bad move. My dad thought it was great. My mum hated me starting work at 16, and she insisted that I go to night school and take A-levels there. So I took an English A-level and I got a B, I think. And then, but by the time that I took it, I was 2 years into my contract at the paper, and that was it. That was my last exam.
Well, we've got the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, on later, so we'll talk more about that then, won't we, with her?
We will. Well, OK, well, let's talk about tomorrow. This big meeting in Alaska.
Yeah.
Putin coming to Anchorage for the first time a Russian president has been there, leader has been there. What are we realistically expecting out of this?
So I'd be surprised if Putin gives away much, actually. Because what he's done is, I think he's completely wrong-footed Donald Trump. Donald Trump initially cozied up to Putin, and he thought somehow that was going to, make Putin see sense.
I'm so charming.
All of that.
Yeah.
And he thought he had a special he was like a Putin whisperer. He thought he had a special way of dealing with him. That rapidly was shown to be complete nonsense. And I think Trump actually feels slightly insulted by Putin. And he feels that Putin hasn't played ball, hasn't been accommodating.
Well, he's not played ball, he's played him.
Completely. And I think he feels slightly humiliated. And if he doesn't land something over the next few days, I think he'll feel even more aggrieved. So it's quite a volatile situation. Putin, on his side, has felt, well, I haven't had to give away anything now, or up till now, so why should I change my approach? And I fear that we won't get much resolution. That's my sense.
What about this offer that Trump is alleged to be going to make, where he says you can keep certain parts of Ukraine that you've nicked, that you've invaded and stolen. You can also keep the bits which have the rare minerals. How's that?
Very good if you are an former American businessman, right? You know, if you can usurp a bit of cash.
Yes.
But, you know, this is a domestic issue, really, for Trump, because when he went into the presidency, he had promised the American people there weren't going to be any foreign wars. He is now, quite far into his first term. Well, it's actually not that far, is it?
Well, he said, actually, Ava,
days, and actually, you know, he's spending all of this money, American money, on supporting Ukraine, also supporting Israel in a quote-unquote foreign war.
So let's rewind. He actually said he would solve it on day one. That's what he actually said.
I don't think I'd actually finished the point yet, Kwasi.
No, but I just wanted to make that point very clear. It wasn't just a question of him saying there will be a deal. He said he would solve this war, or there wouldn't be any foreign war.
Yeah.
I'll solve it on day one.
In 1 day.
And we're in about, day 150, something like that.
It proved more difficult than he thought so far. Did you want to continue?
No, that's right. No, it's just, you know, it's a hard sell, isn't it, to the Make America Great Again crowd who don't want to see a foreign war, that's all. So, yes, he would like to solve it tomorrow, I imagine.
Meanwhile,
but there are worries about the cost,
won't be at the meeting. There was some doubt last week that he might be. Now he's definitely not going to be there. He'll get a phone call if he's lucky when the meeting's over. But Trump has said that if it goes OK, his word, if it goes OK tomorrow, then he wants to see Putin and Zelensky meeting face-to-face. And if they want him there, he'll be there too.
And who on earth is going to mediate that? You know, you're going to have Trump in the middle, you're going to have Vance in the middle. You know, how is this?
I was thinking exactly the same
work?
thing. Yeah.
You know, but you know, this is a real question for the West, and it's a very difficult moment for the West because they have supported Ukraine now for a number of years. It's been extraordinarily expensive. We've shown arguably quite a lot of military might. If Putin now does make gains in Ukraine, the question is, what was the point? And do the West have strength anymore on the global stage? I think a lot of people would say possibly they don't.
But it's just an uncomfortable situation, isn't it, right now, where, you know, Trump is talking to Putin, Zelensky's not even around that table. And what's going to come out of that, and how much of a say then does he have over the future of the country and where those borders are?
Yeah, I think it's a very dangerous situation. As far as Putin is concerned, he's been committed to this war for 3.5 years now. And I don't see anything really in the next 3 or 4 days that's necessarily going to change his approach. So he'll probably want to essentially count the clock down. He'll want to show that he's sort of vaguely interested in peace. But I don't see any compulsion on his part to actually make peace. No. That's what worries me.
And also, what is a worry, isn't it, that Trump does want to get this wound up as soon as possible because he made that pledge. In the Times today, it's saying they've been told Russia and the US have discussed a model for ending the war in Ukraine that would mirror Israel's occupation of the West Bank. So the idea was raised apparently a few weeks ago. I mean, what kind of situation could we end up there where parts of Ukraine are sort of managed or overseen by Russia, which looks like a sort of horrible ongoing situation, doesn't it?
But with American intervention, it could essentially at this point become an American protectorate, which is a crazy concept. You know, but you know, the Telegraph were reporting just a couple of days ago that it could be that the current battle lines end up being the sort of de facto
the de facto,
control. Yes, the de facto control. Yeah. And actually, it is a considerable swathe of Ukraine.
Plus Crimea. Presumably, they're going to sign off on Crimea and accept that is Russian territory.
And if you're Ukraine, the worry is that, yes, Putin might sign up to a deal. Let's say he does. But, you know, Trump won't be around forever. The Russian state will be around for longer than Trump, let's face it. Yep. And they can just, you know, restart the thing in 2 or 3 years' time. I mean, after all, it was 2014 that they annexed Crimea. Yep. And then 8 years later, they invaded Ukraine. And they might think, actually, let's just, you know, bag our wins now. And in 4 or 5 years...
Have another crack.
Have another crack.
Because you can't trust a word Putin says.
So it's a very unstable situation.
And on that point, what do we make of, you know, Trump and Putin being there together, having this kind of conversation and deciding these matters? It's in the paper today talking about Putin, you know, KGB trained.
Sure.
Is President Trump going to be a match for him, coming from the negotiations, the business world, the background that he's got? When we've got these two men in a room together talking about that, how do we think that's going to play out?
Well, Trump was very pleased that it's happening on American soil, but it's in Alaska, which actually was Russian until not so long ago.
Well, America bought it from Russia, didn't it?
Yeah. So, you know, Putin's probably going to have a good look around, isn't he? You know, this will be my next project.
I know where I'm heading next.
Yeah, I think it's volatile and fascinating because you've got two, you know, huge egos, but they're very different type of people. I mean, as Ava said, Trump is a businessman. Yep. You know, he thinks everything in terms of dollars and cents. Putin is more of a kind of deep state, you know, KGB, glory of Soviet Union type of person. He won't be thinking about the pound, shillings and pence in this context. He'll be thinking about global power. He'll be thinking about greater Russia.
Like long-term strategy.
All of that
and
stuff.
he'll be thinking about the guy opposite him. Well, he's only going to be here another 3 months.
All of that. And I've been here 25 years. And, you know. So I think it's a very volatile situation. And you've got very different personalities.
OK. Well, it's going to be an interesting couple of days, isn't it? All right. Now, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, he went that way across the channel a couple of days ago with a film crew in tow. God knows how many boats are going to come across today. The weather's fine, the sea's flat, so we just don't know. But he went the other way, and he says that while he was there, he was threatened with a knife. He went on, he says, to see the French police, who, of course, we have been contributing millions of taxpayers' money to, actually ushering migrants into the boats. Rather than attempting to stop them, they were doing the opposite.
I just think it's very convenient, isn't it, that Chris Philp goes down there and then gets, quote-unquote, threatened with a knife, which, by the way, from the footage, doesn't really feel like that's what's happened. You know, it's possible that maybe someone was holding a knife to, I don't know, cook their dinner. Look, you know, he is intervening in these camps. Can you imagine? I've covered these so many times. I've been to that one just outside Dunkirk many, many times. Can you imagine if you are a human at your complete lowest, where you are camping outside waiting to get onto a dangerous dinghy to cross the channel, and some politician, or you don't even know he's a politician, some random man comes down, throws a camera in your face and starts shouting at you? You would feel rather threatened. And you would feel rather upset.
I don't think he was shouting.
Well, I guess it's...
I have a very different view. I mean, you know, in the interest of full disclosure, I know Chris Philp, he's a friend of mine. I think politicians, often it's said they're out of touch, they don't see what's going on. To his credit, he went down there to see. And actually, you know, for someone who came into Parliament in 2015, as he did, you know, in that time, 2 MPs have been killed. So, you know, MP security, I mean, I don't want to belittle that. Joe Cox and David Amos were stabbed and killed by people wielding knives. And so he's probably at the back of his mind thinking, you know, I hope this, you know, I'm safe. So I think it's entirely legitimate for him to make that point.
But they weren't in asylum seeker camps, were they? Joe Cox or David
No, they
Amos?
weren't. But I'm just saying that MP safety.
Those are 2 tragedies that happened.
They were tragedies.
Motivated.
Yeah, but MP safety is something that would be in his mind.
And what about this point about the French police?
So, look, I wasn't there. I didn't see what the French police were doing. But he made the obvious point that these crossings are illegal. And why shouldn't they seek asylum in France?
Well, he's saying that French police are actively facilitating illegal immigration. They are ushering illegal immigrants onto a public bus to take them towards boat embarkation points. I mean, there's an issue there in that case, isn't there? We've got record numbers coming over, and it seems that the French police are not doing their job to prevent that happening.
Well, I mean, there's a question over the private sector that Chris Philp didn't quite intervene on there, which is that there are a number of sports shops in that area that do sell these very large dinghies. You can go there and you can purchase one. And actually, some of them will even tell you they're surprised at how many dinghies they sell.
Funny that.
Yeah, but I don't know about this busing that's being done by French authorities. I know that they were certainly doing that for a number of Ukrainians. But look, the veracity of this reporting, I don't know how 100% fact-checked it all is. I mean, the last person who went down there was Rupert Lowe last week, and he incorrectly identified a charity rowing boat as a migrant boat. So
you think in general not helpful to be doing this?
No, I think you send a journalist down there.
No,
to
I think people
it,
should see. I think politicians responsible for policy should be able to go and see what's going on for themselves.
But what about his constituency? Do you not think that perhaps he's got a few bits to sort out?
Of course he does. He's a very active constituency MP. I mean, he won.
Well, he was going
very much against the grain.
He was going in his role as Shadow Home Secretary.
Exactly. You know, I mean, I think the idea that as an MP he shouldn't be able, given that that's his responsibility, that's his brief, that he shouldn't go and see it, I think is ridiculous. And people would say rightly, what have you seen? What evidence have you got?
He didn't go down there to do evidence gathering. He went down there with a number of cameras and he went down there to report for a newspaper. All of it was to get a viral clip to compete with what Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage are doing quite successfully. You know, this is a self-serving trip down to Calais. This is not about investigating.
So do you think politicians should be banned, essentially, from...
I think he should have absolutely gone down there. I don't know why he had to film it and then make a huge, big, you know, foray about it on social media.
All right, let's let you two agree to differ on that. Let's talk about the most, I think opinion polls show this is the most hated tax of them all, inheritance tax, because most people see it as a double tax. It's things being taxed for a second time. You've already paid your tax on it. We all know that there is this 7-year get around it, where if somebody decides that they're going to give, say, their children a large portion of what they would have inherited on death, if they do it 7 years before they actually die, then there's no inheritance tax to be paid. Well, we've known that for a long time, and the government have got wise to it, obviously, and the reports are that the government are thinking of putting a gift cap on, so that, let's say, somebody gives their children £1 million, 7 years before they hope, they're not going to die, but 7 years before they die. The government may say, OK, well, you can give £800,000, but we're going to tax you on £200,000, and we're going to put a cap on it. How would that be enforced?
I think it's very difficult, especially if the gift is... Because a lot of gifts are sentimental, and some of them might have a lot of value, so actual monetary value. So
like
rings, jewellery, you know, with more affluent people, they'll have art, they'll have all sorts of things. And how you value that is very difficult. And it's incredibly bureaucratic as well. They have things like wealth taxes. I know people in France who had to pay it, and they had to itemise everything they have every year. and put a value on it. It's incredibly bureaucratic.
How do you prove it?
And it's very difficult, as you say, to value. So I think, in a way, it's just going to bring in more complexity and more bureaucracy into an already difficult, complicated system.
Is it fair?
I don't think it's fair. I think inheritance tax is a double taxation because you're taxed in your lifetime, and then whatever you have at the end, you get taxed.
Your kids are taxed, or whoever you leave it to.
So I think, I understand why it's there, but I think trying to tighten the rules, and the reason they're doing this is because, they haven't managed to restrain spending, as we know, in things like the welfare bill. So they're looking for more ways.
Well, so the issue is that, there's this sort of £50 billion black hole that we're hearing about that needs to be filled in some way or other. And what options do you have then for doing it in a fair way? What is the best way forward? We've got the GDP figures coming out later this morning that will tell us the state of the economy, the growth. A lot of the government strategy hinges on good growth, and we don't think that's likely to happen. So what are the answers here, do you think?
A lot of it is fingers crossed, isn't it? Please, will the economy recover? And it hasn't quite done that yet. I think, they'll probably go after sin taxes. They'll be looking at alcohol. They'll be looking at tobacco. Essentially, just sort of taxes that you pay at source in shops when you're purchasing things. I think that's sort of the easiest get around. It'd be interesting to see if they continue the fuel duty freeze. That's something that's always very popular, keeping the freeze in with the public. But it's a huge cost to the Treasury.
It is.
I would just say on inheritance tax, though, I take the point about the double taxation. I would say when you're talking about an asset like a house, particularly with what we've seen over the last 25 years, with house prices spiralling, with house prices exponentially growing, people who have bought those houses haven't, with nuance, they haven't done anything to see appreciation of that value on that house. So it should be taxed. You might have had your local council might have built a new train station, they might have built a new park there. The value of that house is therefore increased, most of the time actually by like £200,000. You should be taxed on that so that other people
But that
can have an
already is being
opportunity.
taxed. What we're looking at is the caps on gifts. And those gifts aren't generally houses. They're generally things of sentimental value, which are difficult to price. So that's where the complexity and the bureaucracy is going to come in.
Not just difficult to price. The point I was making is difficult to prove that the gift's been made. How would the taxman discover, for example, that Mrs. Jones had given her wedding ring and her engagement ring and her Cartier bracelet that she got for her 50th to her daughter? How could that be?
Well, as we heard, HMRC are now using AI, aren't they, to snoop on our social media to check that we're not lying. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll see your aunt's ring on you.
But the broader point, Ava made the point about, taxing things, on sale or when the transaction happens. But of course we have that, which is VAT, and that's at 20%. There's no way they're going to increase that. And if they did, I think it would be counterproductive. Yeah. So they're in a very tight spot.
OK, Laura, very quickly, what's the top temperature going to be today?
29 degrees Celsius.
29. Well, that's interesting because there's a proposal for a maximum temperature rule of 27, which is 2 degrees lower than that, that refuse collectors and builders and manual workers could be allowed to down tools in the heat wave, or actually when the temperature hits 27 or above. This is a proposal that's being developed by the Health and Safety Executive. We've never had that kind of ruling in this country before, have we? We're British. It's super hot. We just sweat it out. We carry on.
But the thing is, we're now having longer, hotter summers. So in in a period of time, I know everyone talks about that summer in the 70s that was very hot. Now it's 76. Now it's every.
Some of us remember
it. Now it's every single summer, and it's for a very long time.
It's not every single summer, but it's more frequent.
She's right.
It's more frequent.
It is getting a lot hotter. And look, some people can't work when it's over 28, 29 degrees, particularly when you look at people who work in coffee shops, people who are working in restaurants. Sometimes the heat in there is over 45 degrees. No one should be working in that sort of temperature. And actually, employers should be forced to bring in measures that look after their employees.
Well, that's the thing, though. Is it about sort of, OK, the country grinds to a halt as soon as it gets hot? Or do we think, well, this is now the new pattern, so we have to find a way of working with it?
Yeah, absolutely. But until that's in place, what are the government meant to do? Are people meant to suffer? On building sites, a lot of the time, with noise restrictions, you're not able to start at 5 in the morning. Maybe that needs to be looked at.
God, this could mean the end of the stripped to the waist labourer on the building site. That is a national institution. This could be moving into the past. It's not just the Health and Safety exec. Sadiq Khan, London's mayor, he says he wants Londoners to be able to work flexible hours in heat waves. So, for example, they could knock off at maybe 11 o'clock when it gets really hot.
So I get very nervous when
Spanish siesta.
I get very nervous when governments, the mayor of London, start saying, OK, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be a blanket rule. I generally think that employers and people in the workplace can figure it out themselves. And I'm very reluctant to see any kind of legislation about that kind of thing.
Okay.
Because, you know, different businesses work differently. I mean, you could say, you know, if you're a very busy coffee shop and the government says, actually, these people can't work because it's too hot, that could affect your bottom line.
Yeah.
And I think there's got to be a way in which...
There's also a person at the end of the day who might be, you know, deteriorating because they're forced to work in that heat. You know, and I think it should really be about the person rather than
but it doesn't mean...
conglomerate.
I mean, where you and I differ is that you always see a government legislation and rules being imposed from the top.
Because you can't trust private companies
You can't trust... Exactly. Well, I think... The relationship between employers and employees is different.
We have to give a mention, don't we, to the fact we were talking about MPs going on excursions earlier. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has been hosting JD Vance, and they went fishing, didn't they?
They went illegal fishing.
Bit of an issue with the fishing.
Sure.
David Lammy's had to refer himself to the Environment Agency after administrative oversight meant he went fishing without a rod licence. If you weren't aware of this, anglers in England and Wales aged 13 or over must have a rod licence to fish for freshwater species such as carp. That is according to the Environment Agency. He could get a fine because of this.
He didn't even catch any fish.
This is really dumb. I mean, someone in his private office, one of the civil servants, should have just dotted the I's and crossed the T's on this.
What about
and said this might be a... What?
Will we have to deport the vice president?
No, I think he was okay.
Breaking the law? Is a foreigner allowed to fish?
I think he probably sorted out the administrative stuff better than our foreign secretary. But this is the sort of thing that you're going to get scrutinised on.
Yeah.
Because they've got all the cameras, they've got all the pictures, and it's going to come up.
I think
someone should have just done the research. And they didn't. They could have been in a coffee shop. They could have done something that didn't require a licence to show them getting on.
It's embarrassing, though, isn't it, Ava?
I love it. I think it's more embarrassing that didn't even catch a fish. That's what I'd put on the note.
You think that's most embarrassing?
Yeah,
you didn't even catch a fish.